Welcome to the halls of Ibexan, the goatfolk metropolis. Come visit its 4 districts. Tread softly in the hallowed halls of Kabmut Holy City, the dour citadel of the ecclesiarchy, where monks whisper careful prayers as Templars patrol and watch for heresy. Walk the great wide boulevard of the Grand Cours, where wealthy burghers stroll and plot and scheme, awaiting the imminent death of their leader and preparing for the power struggle to come. Pick your way through the twisting, narrow corridors of the old town, where the common folk live and toil under the roar of the great falls. Join the artists and intellectuals gathering at Bistro Satyricon to discuss and debate dangerous ideas away from the Templars' prying ears. Slink into the smoldering, sooty Candlestick Quarter, where the poorest and lowest eke out desperate lives, and strange cults, infiltrators, and even a great mad serpent bide their time and wait for their moments to emerge. This is the Blades of Gixha Video Update 7. All about this city level, the halls of Ibexan. We'll visit each district in detail. I'm Kuragh, and this is the Blades of Gixha, a mega dungeon setting for tabletop RPGs, which I initially made as part of the Dungeon 23 challenge, drawing an area every day for a year. Each month is a floor. I covered the previous ones in the previous videos in this series. You should check those out if you're interested in learning more. So as I was initially drawing this, people kept asking me to publish it. This wasn't my original intent, but I ran a quite successful Kickstarter for it, and I'm working hard to go back and flesh out each level, to clean them up, add more spreads and information, and generally make this into the best book it can be. The Kickstarter is over, but you can still pre-order the Blades of Gixha as a book or as poster-sized art prints at paradiso.ooo/Gixha. And you'll get your copy when it's all done, along with all the other backers. That's paradiso.ooo/Gixha. So, let's get into this level and what it's all about. Ibexan is a largely goatfolk city. Goatfolk are a horned and furred goat-like people, kind of like the Bregals in Dolmenwood. That's these guys over here, and this guy. They're great climbers, they have horns they can attack with, they're resistant to poisons, and over the course of each one's life, they grow a bezoar in their belly, which is like an indigestible stone that has certain magical properties. There are ways to get a bezoar out of a goatfolk's belly, but traditionally they're only removed on death. And in Ibexan, the goatfolk give their bezoar to the ecclesiarchy, the church, as tithe when they die. And that's because Ibexan is a theocracy, ruled by Pontiff of the Kabmut faith. So, as in any theocracy, the prevailing religion is quite important. Up here we have information about the Kabmut faith, which holds that there are 2 true gods, Kab, the black goat, and Mut, the white sheep. In their creation story, Mut, the sheep, created the spiritual realm, a paradise of order and peace. Kab, the goat, saw this and was overcome with jealousy. He created a rival realm, a raucous place of chaos and sensuality, the material world. With promises of pleasure and excitement, he lured the spirits from Mut's world into his own. This concerned Mut, but Kab promised the spirits could freely return after living a life here, as long as they did not cling to material possessions, for those could not leave the material realm. Mut, believing that no spirit would give up eternal peace and bliss for fleeting sensations and possessions, let them go. But it was the very fleeting nature of the physical that left the spirits hungry, yearning for more. So they clung and continued returning to Kab's realm, becoming trapped in a cycle of reincarnation, eventually forgetting they'd ever been spirits. And so all of the beings of this world are spirits that once knew eternal harmony and peace, but have been tricked by the pleasures and pains of the flesh into reincarnating endlessly into this imperfect, chaotic, maybe even evil material world. Now, if all this feels a little Gnostic to you, yes, this is all very inspired by Gnosticism and the concept of the demiurge, and especially by Catharism, a medieval Christian movement that was declared heretical by the Catholic Church and wiped out by the Inquisition. Look them up. Really interesting people with a fascinating belief system. Fun fact, you can play as a Cathar in Crusader Kings. Of course, here, instead of getting wiped out, the Gnostics have formed something resembling a medieval Catholic church of their own, the Kabmut Ecclesiarchy. Over here, we have a nice representation of this belief system, the Atrium of Duality. You can see that this was the first day I drew of this month, and I drew it without knowing what this level was going to become. But it wound up becoming kind of the seed for the themes in this level. So here we have a statue of Cobb, the black goat, standing on a pool of water, lit by a flame on each of his horns. And looking into the water, we can see a reflection, but the reflection is of Mut, the white sheep. So we have a solid physical representation of Cobb, the god of the material realm, and an elusive ethereal representation of Mut, the god of the spiritual realm. Next we have Ibexan social strata and associated headwear. Like many real societies throughout history, Ibexa has sumptuary laws about who can wear what kinds of garments, specifically, in this case, headwear. So, above everybody, we have the pontiff, Yezeba, who is a goatfolk cleric of Kabmut, supreme leader of Ibexa and the Kabmut Ecclesiarchy, and they wear this mitre. Over here on the left, we have the ranks of the Ecclesiarchy, the high priests, the Templars, and the monks with progressively smaller hats. And on the right, we have the secular strata, which exist in parallel to the ecclesiarchy, but still under the pontiff. At the top of this group is Burgomaster Zekarod, who has this big hat with an orb on top of it. And here we can see Zekarod is old and dying, and the Grand Burgers and pontiff are preparing for a succession crisis. This would be a good thing to trigger once the player characters have been in town for a little bit. Underneath the Burgomaster is the Council of Grand Burgers, who also have pretty fancy hats. There are 3 of them, with their residences noted around the Grand Cours. Under them are the Burgers, who wear fezzes, basically, and they live all along the Grand Cours, enjoying positions of wealth and privilege. Next, we have the Commoners, who do not wear hats. All the positions listed up till now are reserved exclusively for goatfolk, but the Commoners count among them a scattering of cave elves and perhaps a few others. They live in the Old Town. And finally, underneath everybody, are the Candlefolk of the Candlestick Quarter, which is this area down here. So, let's go through these districts and talk about who has access to what you can find in each of them, and how they all relate to each other. Over here on the left, we have a list of all 4 districts, each with a description and an encounter table. So first we have Kabmut Holy City, which is this region over here, with these 2 official entrances, guarded at all times. It is open only to the clergy and those they specifically invite. Even the Burgomaster cannot enter without an invitation. The Holy City is cathedral-like, with ornate pointed arches and burning incense. It's quiet, gloomy, dimly lit, and you can always hear chanting in the distance. So we can roll for encounters in here, and to do so, I'll be using this set of lovely amethyst dice that Dice Nest sent me. A quick thank you to Dice Nest. They are a company that makes really lovely dice out of all kinds of cool materials like stone and glass. These right here are amethyst, which is a kind of translucent purple quartz. And the color just goes really nicely with the purple ink I used to draw all these levels. And here, check this out. Get a little light. And hold on, let me turn these off. Check that out. Let's get the D20 on here. Yeah, and you can see the sort of internal texture really nicely this way. This D12 is a little paler. D8, it's got some nice colors. Percentile die, D10, D6. The D4 is this cool shape, which rolls better than a triangular D4. Anyway, let's get these lights back on. Refocus, and all right. And because they're made out of stone, they have this heft to them that makes them extra satisfying to roll. So the Dice Nest folks sent me these along with an affiliate link and a discount code for you guys. Go to this URL and use the code Paradiso at checkout, and you'll get 15% off your order of what are sure to become your new favorite dice set. And with that affiliate link, I'll get a small cut of your order, so you'll be helping me out in the process. Anyway, each of these districts has its own D6 encounters table, so we won't be needing the rest of these for now. And we'll start by rolling for Kabmut Holy City. Alright, we got a 6. So 6 is actually the same thing on all of these encounter tables. It says 2 of the above interacting. So what that means is you want to roll 2 more times on this encounter table, 3, and 3. So 3 in Kabmut Holy City is 2d4 Templars patrolling. So 2 and 4. So we have one group of 2 Templars, and we have another group of 4 Templars, and they're patrolling, and they encounter each other. And, these guys probably know each other, so maybe they're talking. Maybe one group is giving another group an update about what's going on in some other part of the city, or maybe one group is relieving the other group, and some of these guys are about to be off duty. Other encounters we might have here are with monks, high priests, or a visiting burgher, escorted by Templars, of course. The Holy City has a bunch of important sites, like the sacristy, which holds several treasures, and this pool, which reflects only true forms, so any illusions will not appear in the reflection. It's also a body of water which, if you swim straight down into it without turning, you'll wind up moving upward through this pillar and up out of this pool, which itself is at the bottom of the well in the middle of the town on the surface. And it's the same thing going the other way. If you manage to swim down from here, through the pillar, you would emerge here, and it would feel to you like this entire level is upside down, but it's not. This is one of the weird spatial elements of this dungeon, where the very form of the space takes on non-Euclidean magical properties. This whole level and the dominant belief system here involve a lot of themes of reflection, inversion, and duality, and so here that's baked into the very structure of the space. This fountain of glowing water works the same way. It's fed by this whirlpool. Another notable location in the Holy City is the Hall of Saints, which has 4 pairs of opposing statues of major Kabmut saints. The ones on the left are saints of Kab, the ones on the right are saints of Mut. Just as there are 2 opposing gods, Kabmut saints come in pairs, because the gods send messengers to complement and undermine each other. And so one saint is an earthly deceiver, and the other a spiritual enlightener, but both are sent by gods, and so both are holy and must be revered in equal measure. Down here we describe them. The first pair are the founders of Ibexan, Gimma the builder and Koba the just. The second are the great rulers, Dread Araxit and Axar the pious. Third are Daruk and Gixa, the elvish upenders who brought great change to the underworld. And fourth are Haza and Nazag of the revolution that ended Dread Araxit's reign and ushered in the age of the ecclesiarchy. Aside from the first pair, who are very ancient, these are all figures in the history spread, and are part of the history-turned-legend of this world. Down here we have a little complex with the pontiff's apartments with a little escape route, and the apartments of the high priests. Here's a dungeon, and training grounds for the Templars, and a morgue where deceased goatfolk are taken to have their bezoars removed, and brought over here to the Holy Bezoar Vault, the center of the ecclesiarchy's wealth, and the ecclesiarchy has been known to use them in trade with other groups. This would make a great target for a daring heist. The next district is the Grand Cours, home of the burghers, the Ibexan bourgeoisie. It starts over here and loops all the way around to here with this connector over here. It's a wide, high-ceilinged boulevard, flanked by huge columns with alcoves of flickering candles dripping waxy fat. Burghers and clergy move freely, but others must have business here. So while the burghers and clergy can move through this district freely, everyone else may be stopped and questioned by Templars and turned away or even arrested if they don't think you have a good reason to be there. This district has its own encounter table, so let's get that D6 back out and see what we get. 5 is D2 candlefolk tending to candles. So say 1, 2, 3 is 1, 4, 5, 6 is 2, 6. So we've got 2 candlefolk tending to candles. So the candlefolk, who are the lowest in the pecking order, have only one valid reason to be on the Grand Cours, and that is candle business. Tending to the candles that are in the alcoves in all of these pillars, these little circles all around the edges. And in fact, the Grand Cours is the most spacious and well-lit area of Ibexan. No one has to carry their own light because the candlefolk are tasked with ensuring everything remains well-lit. Along the Grand Cours, we have apartments of burghers up here. We have public baths over here, although one has kind of collapsed. We have a court and a jail here, and the river runs swiftly along the bottom here. We have some notable homes of the 3 grand burghers, Guilix, Yakod, and Abo, and we have the mansion of the burgomaster, Zekarod. You'll also see that I've put a bunch of doors along the Grand Cours that don't seem to lead anywhere. And for those, we have another d6 table right here, which you can use to determine where they lead as your players encounter them, if it winds up being relevant. So let's roll up a few. 5. So 5 is a shop of some kind, like a tailor or a smith. So let's say that's what we found here. We go to the next one. 5, another shop, maybe a hatter to make all these cool hats. Next one. 5, oh my god, so many shops. This shop, maybe it's a general store, who knows. Next one. Oh my god, okay, I'm gonna fudge that. There we go, 3, it's a burger home. So it's another apartment like these. That's the most common result, despite my 5 streak there. Next we have the Old Town, which is over here. The Old Town is all narrow, tall, twisting corridors with rough, uneven stone. Laundry is strung up everywhere overhead. It's dirty and you hear the sounds of bleating and clacking hooves everywhere. And it's dark. People have to carry their own candles, bought from vendors on the Grand Cours, and many of the goatfolk, to keep their hands free, stick the candles on their horns, like the statue of Kabmut up here, to light their way as they move about. Here in the Old Town, we have another encounter table, so let's roll on that. 4. We have some monks ministering. So these are, of course, going to be Kabmut monks. Other people you can find, Templars patrolling, a burgher with bodyguards kind of slumming it, commoners, of course, and some cave elf traders. And of course, we can come across 2 of those groups interacting with each other. And that can be a great way for your players to observe how these different groups interact with each other, right? If we were to have commoners or traders or even monks interacting with some Templars, the Templars have the authority here. So they might be bossing people around, bullying them, taking bribes, who knows. And while we have the die out, we also have a bunch of these unmarked doors in the Old Town. And there's another table here for them. So let's roll up a few, starting with this one. 4, it's a workshop. So it could be a tanner or a weaver, a blacksmith, lots of options. Let's go to the next one. 6, that is empty or a ruin. So it's abandoned. Players might try to squat in a place like that, but they'd have to keep a pretty low profile to not get in trouble with the Templars. The most common result is going to be commoners' homes, and we also have dining halls and pubs. There are some plazas here. This one has a small market, and this one, the central plaza, is called Founders Square, with a statue of the 2 founders, Gimma and Koba, the same pair depicted in the Hall of Saints. And off this plaza is a quite significant place, the Bistro Satyricon, described down here, a popular, sprawling eatery that doubles as the intellectual and artistic hub of Ibexan. The ecclesiarchy hates this and has raided it, but has been put off shutting it down entirely by the grand burghers, who warn of popular unrest. Some of them also, privately, see it as a counterweight to the pontiff's influence. Unknown to most, Radical Bistro's staff have dug a secret tunnel from the kitchen into Kabmut Holy City, and you can see the tunnel here. Here's the bistro's kitchen, and here it connects to the Holy City. Now, what might they have planned? This is a closely kept secret, but if some player characters get to know the right people and learn of the tunnel, it could be very useful information. In the Old Town, there's also the Kabmut Cathedral, and as you can see, there are a lot of pews over here on this side of the river, and on the other side, there's a high pulpit that the high priests and sometimes the pontiff use to preach and declare edicts to the unwashed masses. And next to that, we have the docks, with some boats used by fishermen and kelp gatherers and the like, who players might be able to hire to ferry them across the water. The water in this lake, by the way, is fed by this 200-foot-tall waterfall, which flows down from the luminous undersea on the previous level. Phytoplankton make the water glow when it's disturbed, so the spot where the water comes crashing down actually emits quite the turquoise glow. Of course, all the mist that gets kicked up reduces visibility immensely, so this little cave elf village exists in a really interesting environment of roaring water and thick, glowing fog. And this lake feeds the river over here that flows through the cathedral and along the Grand Cours, under the bridge to the Candlestick Quarter, and down to the next level. Also in the Old Town, we have the home of Kuragh up here. Kuragh is a famed goatfolk sculptor who gained wealth and fame through commissions from the burghers and the church despite his outre, flamboyant persona and controversial statements. He also secretly works with Guilix and Kuragh, moving Sopor through the secret room in his house and up to 218. So here's that secret room, hidden behind a bookshelf and a staircase that leads up through this stone tower and up here behind the Gixin Daruki Chapel next to the lair of Kuragh. Sopor is a powerful drug that comes from deeper in the dungeon, which has some interesting magical effects when used. There's actually a Sopor den near the Kobold Tent Village on the first level, and certain groups in the town above smuggle it off island. Kuragh is involved in this trade, along with Grandburger Guilix, and they've both made a good deal of money off of it. And Kuragh is this interesting figure who can kind of get away with more than most because he's such a prominent and renowned figure, but he's also one of those people where you're like, someday you're gonna push it too far and something bad's gonna happen. But he seems to love living on that edge, whether it's saying stuff to goad the pontiff or moving forbidden drugs. Someone worth keeping tabs on, and he'll be hanging out at the bistro a lot, stirring up trouble. And finally, we have the Candlestick Quarter. It has rough, narrow stone corridors. It's smoky and stinks of burning fat. It's lit by 6 huge candles in plazas, heaped piles of tallow, too low quality to sell. And you can see those here. The quarter is home to the insular and ostracized candlefolk. Other Ibexans rarely visit, even Templars. The Candlestick Quarter is kind of a special area, so we have some extra information about the candlefolk. They're an isolated underclass of Ibexan society, but they're also essential to it, keeping it lit. They're about 80% goatfolk, 15% giant frogs, who come from the level above, and 5% cave elf. Harvesters use the raft and winch, which you can see right here, to descend to the level below and dive for fatty lumpets, which are rendered to make candles. Lumpets are like limpets, like snails, but larger, lumpier, and very fatty. They bring candles to the Grand Cours to keep it lit, provide burghers and clergy with candles, and to sell to Old Town commoners. So that was that encounter that we rolled on the Grand Cours, D2 candlefolk tending to candles. And in fact, the candlefolk may only leave the quarter on candle business, and they're often harassed even then. But there is one advantage to being one of the candlefolk. There's a tacit social contract. As long as candlefolk keep Ibexa lit, Templars do not enter the Candlestick Quarter. And this insulation from Templars makes the quarter a haven of social and religious freedom, while also being an impoverished and isolated ghetto. As a result, cultists and candlestick pagans can live fairly openly in this quarter. Candlestick pagans are those living here whose beliefs oppose the Kabmut ecclesiarchy. They might have an inverted belief that Kab is good and Mut is evil. They might revere some of these saints like Gixa and Daruk above or instead of Kab and Mut, etc. There's a variety of beliefs in the Candlestick Quarter. Okay, next, you know the drill. Let's roll up some encounters and doors. All right, that's a 1 for the encounter. D6 candlefolk carrying a lumpet harvest. So that'll be 4 candlefolk carrying a lumpet harvest. And they'll be bringing it to some location in the quarter where they can process the lumpets to create candles. Other encounters you might have here are more candlefolk, some candlestick pagans, a giant frog cultist, or a cave elf scout. Or, as always, 2 of the above interacting. And as before, we have these unmarked doors, so let's roll the d6. This first door is a 2. That is an overcrowded home. Let's see, the next door is a 5. That would be a pagan house of worship. Next one, 6. A ruin, right? And so we have homes, we have candle workshops, other workshops, houses of worship, and ruins. And finally, over here, we have the Pool of Sarkasha, which is connected to the Candlestick Quarter, and also back up here, to the caves of the cult of Sarkasha, a group of mostly giant frogs that worship and feed the giant serpent that lives in the water here. That serpent's name is Sarkasha, but unknown to these folks, it's actually only the body of Sarkasha, acting on instinct and hunger, separated from her mind for reasons you can read about in the history. She's propitiated with offerings by the cult, but if that ever breaks down, she will break free and rampage through the dungeon, and she is quite the fearsome beast. And if she's ever reunited with her mind, she becomes even more powerful and dangerous, but also intelligent, so maybe players could find a way to reason with her? Maybe? Okay, so obviously there's more stuff here I didn't get into, but that should give you a pretty good idea of what the 4th level of the Mega Dungeon, the Halls of Ibexan, is all about. If you want to get your own copy of this, The Blades of Gixa, as either a book or a pair of poster-sized art prints, or both, just hop over to paradiso.000/Gixa to pre-order it. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like, subscribe, bell, hype, leave a comment with your thoughts, send it to your friends. Everything helps. Probably. Maybe. And if you got a little extra cash, consider becoming a member of my website, paradiso.zone, where you can join the ranks of these amazing ongoing supporters, who I could not do all this without. And on top of my undying gratitude, you'll get a bunch of cool stuff I've made for RPGs, as well as access to all the videos I've made with no YouTube ads. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, these folks are just the best. Thank you all so much for your support. It means the world to me, and it means I get to keep making weird stuff like this. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Yeah, and finally, hit the affiliate link, head over to Dice Nest with discount code Paradiso. Seriously, these are really nice. Okay, thank you for watching all the way to the end. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.